SDFC is continuing to show the league that we are here and that we're here to compete for a top playoff spot. Playing away against St. Louis could have been a trap game. It could have been a game where we drop much needed points in a very tough Western Conference. For the majority of the game, looked like we would repeat our first game against St. Louis, but SDFC in the end didn't let that happen. How did San Diego FC pull out this win? What do we still need to watch out for as a team? And is it time for a change at striker? Welcome to the Penalty Kick Podcast. I'm your host, Mike Gio, and what a weekend it was. Sorry for a little bit later of a post. Normally I post on Sunday. This is coming out on a Monday. I was in Utah competing in a Ragnar relay race at Zion National Park. It was a beast race. So much fun, but a lot of pain. Let me tell you, golly. What wasn't painful was seeing the scoreline of the SDFC game while I was out there running the race. I can't lie, I was a little bit worried. I was checking on my phone every now and then. I didn't get really reception at Zion National Park, but I was always trying to find the Wi-Fi so I can check in on the game. And I continued to see 0-0 scoreline most of the game, and I really thought it would be a repeat of our first game and that we could potentially drop too much needed points because everyone else in the West, or at least at the top of the West, was winning the majority of their games. I said that St. Louis, I said in the pregame episode that St. Louis should probably line up in a 3-4-3 because that formation would be a little bit wider, would attack our wingbacks a little bit more. And that was what the coach did, lined up in a 3-4-3. And guess what? It worked really well for them. We struggle against teams that park the bus, that stay in a defensive shell, that are very organized on the defensive end and compress space. We want space, and that is what our team and our offense particularly is predicated on. But we find it difficult against teams like St. Louis, who parked the bus, against Colorado, who was pressing and really played an aggressive defense, and Austin FC, which countered us, played defense and countered us quite a bit. Also, I called for Mighton to start, but Mighton was still out injured. It looks like it is an upper body injury, but it also does not look serious. But he was not in the lineup, and we reverted back to Valakari up front, but we kept our wing backs the same. So it looks like our team is really solidifying, but we do have some questions up front. I came home yesterday from Utah, and as I got home, I rewatched the game. I watched the game from, start to finish, and the first half was really lackluster. I felt it was almost an exact and eerily similar repeat of game one against St. Louis. The ball was moving too slowly. We couldn't find pockets of space. We weren't really moving the ball quickly, doing intricate passing, and we were struggling to break down their defense yet again. And they looked like the more likelier team to score in that first half. And there was just nothing exciting. There was more so worry on my end of watching that first half and what we produced and the lack of intensity. But I want to give a couple players, shout outs because I really think they did make the difference in the first half and kept us really in the game. Godoy is really turning into the enforcer that I've been asking for. He is really chippy. He likes to talk trash to the opponents, which I absolutely love. And you really need someone like that to be the enforcer. And so people are looking over their shoulder. Really wish that happened against Diego Luna in the Real Salt Lake game that Real Salt Lake won against us. But it looks like he's stepping into that role. Also, he looks like our distributor in the center defensive midfield position. He's doing more cross-field passes, but also they're dropping him way down on the back line so then he can pick up the ball and distribute to a Luka, to, our wings. Again, cross-field passes, looking absolutely phenomenal. And I think Zverkov is taking more of the role of a traditional center defensive midfielder, does everything technically well. So I love that the roles are starting to really get defined on this team. Also, Willie, solid defensive first half. There was a couple instances where he tracked back and he booked it back on the defensive end, even when he was out of position because maybe it was a turnover, and he really cut out a couple half chances for St. Louis, which maybe those half chances turn into full chances and potentially a goal. So I really want to give Willie a shout out for that tracking back. He looks really solid on the defensive end, even though I think his offensive prowess is not top level, but still he's a defensive position. So defense should come first. Loving what he's doing, loving how he's growing within this team. That is a really good sign. Second half, we started off a little bit better. We were a little bit more intricate. The ball was moving a little bit more technically and a little bit more quickly, and it looked like we were a little bit more of a dangerous team, but still nothing doing really much for SDFC, and St. Louis still had their chances as well up until the 79th minute. And I want to throw some stats up pre-79th minute in this game. You can see we did not have a great game, and it again looked eerily similar to our first game against St. Louis. And all I could think of, we need better build-up play, and St. Louis probably deserved at least a point from this game. Look at the stats. We had 0 shots on goal in 79 minutes. I will say Chucky was just a little bit off, especially on his shooting in this game, even though I thought he played and facilitated and his role within the team was really, really good. His shooting was a little bit off. You know, he missed a couple of opportunities, which might have found the back of the net on another day. But we just could not break down St. Louis, except for when our defense turned into offense. We had this interception in the midfield, and I believe it was Godoy and Sverikov who really clamped down on a midfielder, turned that midfielder over. 1 pass, 2 pass. Iloski then lets the ball run across his body to beat a defender, get a defender on his back, and then shoots at the bottom left corner. And the goalkeeper was just not set. So the goalkeeper really didn't even have a chance at stopping this goal, and it hits the bottom left corner of the goal. The bottom left, it was amazing. It was very beautiful, very technical, and it was kind of a 1v3 for Iloski. And it was the transition that really won that goal, because we couldn't break down the defensive lines when they were parking the bus. But when there's a turnover, defense is out of position and there is space in the back is when we look good, and we needed some space, and Iloski took his chance. Iloski is looking like a super sub, or maybe something more. Then the Dreer goal. It was a little bit of luck. Let's call a spade a spade. It was a little bit of luck, but it was a clearance on the defensive end. Again, defense to offense. A clearance on the defensive end, and then St. Louis's defense and goalkeeper were in just a calamitous state because the defender couldn't clear and ended up going off of his boot right to Dreer. Dreer goes around the goalkeeper and goes a little too wide, but the defense kind of gets back into the goal. The goalkeeper gets to his near post back into this goal, and Dreer, this was cocky. This was cocky and confident from Dreer, and I love to see it. There's no way the goalkeeper should have been beat at his near post. But what did Dreer do? Kind of took his time, composed himself from a very, very tight angle, almost at the end line, and shot it right by the goalkeeper at the near post. Maybe that's a goalkeeper error, but you got to give Dreer props, because you have to take the opportunities when they present themselves, and he took that opportunity. So that was great, and it was much needed, because even though we took a 2-0 lead, St. Louis had a very scrappy goal off a corner kick to bring them back into it and potentially steal a point. But thankfully, SDFC shut that down, and it didn't matter because we got all 3 points. And, you know, rethinking about this game, re-examining the game, I was not happy with how we played overall. I really do think it was a repeat of our first game against St. Louis. And again, it was a 0-0 tie, and this game could have been that. What I will say, and something that I think is very positive, and that's what I'm really sitting with here today, at the end of games, we kind of have an extra gear. We do have fight. We do have resilience. And I think this is big. And the reason this is big is because we can push for results even though we might not play our best. Think of RSL Real Salt Lake when we played in the first game. It was 1-1 going into added time, and it ends 3-1 because we push, we send everyone forward. That is great. Think of Austin FC. Even though we lost the Austin FC game, we were down that almost that entire game, and we fought back, and we should have probably pulled out a point, even though we couldn't get the job done. But that shows the fight, the resilience, the grittiness to find a way to win. And when I think of those things, sometimes you're not going to be the better team. Sometimes it's not going to be your day. But the difference between a good team and a great team is getting results even though you don't deserve the result. And that's what this game showed me. We can play against any team on any day and get a result even when we don't play our best. So that is what I'm going to be taking out of this game. And I think that is really good, especially when you get into the playoffs. And defenses are going to be tougher. It's going to be more scouting. You're going to go have, potentially 2 legs. That is going to be very important because you're going to need to find ways to win. And I think this team has that. But the last reflection that I have is who is going to start up front at striker? Valakari has kind of been in a little bit of a slump, has not looked great on the offensive end. Yes, he has had a couple chances that he hasn't put away. But again, as a striker, you need to put away your chances. The sad part is I don't want to blame Valakari 100% because he's not a striker. He's a midfielder. And that's 2 different mentalities. Striker, score. Midfielder, distribute. Play on the defensive end sometimes, right? Again, controlling the middle space of the field. So it's not completely his fault, but he is in a slump. And do we need to make changes? I want Mighton to start just because I have a bias for Mighton starting. Mighton I love, and I think he could break down defenses. If you move Dreyer to the center of the field in the striker position, that looked phenomenal, and it was the 5-0 shellacking when Mighton started. However, if he's injured and he can't play, or sometimes you just need a rotation, is it time to give Iloski a start? Is it time to give him the starting job up front? He is more of a natural striker and knows how to run in behind, knows how to let the ball roll through his body to beat a defender and put a defender on his back and get a shot off. Exactly what happened with the goal this past game. Let me know what y'all think. Is it time to start Iloski? Is it time to get critical on Valakari? Or if Mighton comes back, does Mighton start? Who's going to be our striker? Let me know in the comments who you think should start at striker because we have another game this Wednesday. Very quick turnaround. This is the time where the coaches make their money because you are going to have to do rotations because you have a game on Wednesday and then you have a game over the weekend, right? Not much time to rest. Very quick turnaround. I won't be able to do a pregame episode on Colorado. I have a late night work event tomorrow, which is when I would have been shooting and doing my research. But I'll make sure to do a turnaround on the post game for our home game at Snapdragon against Colorado this Wednesday. It is time to get some get back on Colorado.